been saving up games for quite some time to do analysis with, so I feel it's a good time as we're hitting the holiday season. And should be mentioned that, of course, our big three courses are on sale on Chessable if you're interested in some of those, as well as opening oddities. But it gets hard to fit everybody in during the holiday season. What can you say? So, without further ado, let's jump in to this game. And this game I felt good about, as it's not often I can win a game versus a player that is 2,500 plus on Lee Chess with a very, very straightforward plan and play overall. So let's go ahead and go through the moves in this game. And we will kick it off with c4. And I've never minded much going into this transposition into the Maroczy bind and the accelerated dragon, as to me the plan was always pretty intuitive, and I'm going to highlight some of these ideas for you. So first and foremost, after bishop g7, we're getting to the standard position, and bishop d7 is the main move, as we don't have another good square for the piece to go to. And after queen d2, when in a cramped position, it helps to trade some pieces to get some lift. So I simply play knight takes d4. The bishop improves, getting a better square, hitting the e4 pawn. This coaxes the solid move f3. And now we're in a position where we need to start focusing on how can we improve our pieces and get some space. And what are we looking to do here? This is what I'd like to call in my text a memory marker position. And what does white want to do? Well, if you gave white a few moves here, I think it could be quite annoying for white to say play b4, b5, kicking the bishop away, and gradually getting space. So if white is settled with his center control and he's chilling, and it looks like he is playing f3, not f4, to attack us on the king side, queenside expansion is going to be white's plan, and we're going to go with the mainline move a5 to play against that expansion. So a relatively rare move was played here. b3 is the main line, but king h1, a solid move. Lots of solid moves to choose from. And now for the next step, what's the plan in the position? Well, in a lot of these situations, we often do not want to trade off the dragon bishop as we're being attacked viciously on the king side. Well, in this case, there's no battery, there's no rook on h1, there's no h4, h5, and that type of nonsense. So we're completely safe. And in fact, this is the good bishop. This is the bad bishop. The bad bishop is just hitting on the pawns. So one of the deepest, darkest desires in this position for black is to be able to trade this bishop for its counterpart and this bishop for the knight. As this bishop is biting on a bunch of pawns, we'll have a good knight versus bad bishop position. So this is the dream. So I'm first going to get my knight out of the way and say, would you like to trade? Good, he doesn't do that. And in practice in the database, white's won the majority of games. But black's going to go wrong here. I followed up with knight c5, continuing a main line, where a number of moves have been played. Rook a, b1, b3, queen c2, lots of solid stuff. But black's plan is generally going to be the same. So my opponent played rook fd1 in the game. Doesn't affect the evaluation, still roughly equal. Well, we need to get our pieces activated. I mean, I'd love to have my plan, but it doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. So queen b6 keeps an ID right on b4. Got a marker on him. Connects the rooks and is somewhat encouraging a move like knight d5 where we're going to capture. And here, queen takes b2, and we're already generating counterplay and have the better side of equality. So rook a b1 would make a lot of sense. My opponent in this case played rook a c1. And a4 is a move that strongly comes into consideration, but here it is a plan that I saw, I believe it's from an English that Carlsen played against Karyakin years and years ago at this point. I want to say maybe 2011. A plan really made an impression for me here. We want to trade off this bishop. So first you go rook fc8. Then you bring the queen back to d8. h5, king h7, queen f8, and finally bishop h6 to trade off the bad bishop, because that is the overall plan in the structure. And if white's sitting, we have the luxury of time to perform this plan. So I like this move rook fc8 for that reason, as we have a clear plan. b3 was played. And as b3 was played, I abandoned my slow plan idea as I see a4 as being annoying in some lines. And I get the queen off the pin, so I don't have to worry about any b-pawn pushes. If the knight ever moves, I have the flexibility to trade queens. Seems roughly equal. White should definitely be looking to get off this pin, say queen e1, and then try to relocate. But my opponent went straight away knight d5, and now I'm starting to get everything that I want in the position. Let's clip there. And notice, I'm not in a hurry to trade queens, as if white captures, that casually develops our rook and makes a threat immediately. So I'm going to come back to my plan of I need to get rid of the bad bishop. And I mean, it's funny to say bad here, as the bishop has so many squares, but it's attacking air. It's still better to trade bishops, and that's the overall plan. So I go h5, followed by king h7, and now it's subtle. If I play queen takes, I'm following up with bishop h6. This just looks like I'm trying to prevent bishop h6. Queen takes. I get in my move, and engine says zeros, but I feel pretty confident in a practical game that I'm going to be able to win here, as I'm getting the desired good knight versus bad bishop position. Bishop takes g5 could leave a bone in the throat pawn, and it's completely fine, but I preferred f6, as it would get the king closer to the action, and we have g5 at some point as a break. Rook g8, or rook b8 first. And after bishop b5, all right, notice how all of our pawns are starting to get on the opposite color of the bishop. Looking to break the only place we can. Utilizing the open file. And the engine still likes white here, and that's completely fine. But practical games, it's hard to beat black in this position. So I'm going to play forever. King e3. All right, that's not going to work. First, rook g3. Rook ag8 was definitely an idea, but we're kind of cementing the pawn structure to not go anywhere. h4. King g5. Now our king's starting to get to great squares, and if we can keep all these pawns stuck, that guarantees the bishop to be a bad piece. King f4. And on this move, we'll see how much time that I took. It was 151. Black to move here. What's the first move that comes to mind for you? Hopefully you paused the video and found the plan. Knight takes e4. Lovely little tactic. Followed by rook takes c3. And that's all she wrote. And many games are decided by these simple one movers, but I was beginning to really like my position even without the blunder by my opponent. And it's hard here. I mean, I think you have to go rook c4, as white can look to try to generate counterplay with b4. And more than likely king e5 or even b5, b4 here. b5 is probably what I would play in a practical game. And king g5, rook h8. It's still very, very much a game, as that's an idea, followed by h3 at some point. It's a lot to hold together. It's difficult for me to believe that this position is completely zeros by the computer. But yeah, engine knows best, right? Everybody. I've never been a all or nothing type of guy with the engine. And this type of position, if you're purely following the engine and saying it's equal, well, what's the better side of equal? And in a practical game, if you can't hold the position, it doesn't matter what the engine says. So hopefully you enjoyed this little investigation of a particular position that I like. And it came out of an English as we reached a Maroczy bind Sicilian dragon, but the more typical move order would definitely be knight c6, d4, cd, knight d, g6, c4. And this would be the way that we would reach it normally. So, a little side note for you as we close out this video.